This is CBC Here and Now.
It would be a fool's errand to think that we could do this overnight or within a month or so, but we're going to do it in the right amount of time that respects the taxpayers of the province.
Me taking this job is a job loss. There's more of that to come.
Nalcor no more.
The Crown Corporation that oversees Muskrat Falls is being dismantled.
We're going to say goodbye to the humidity for the next couple of days, but don't worry, it'll return next week.
To lose our investment or be completely stuck with a rapidly depreciating inventory, we need to cash out at this time and move on to something different.
From a busing shortage to bust.
Why some operators are selling their buses just to stay afloat. Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Peter Cowan.
And I'm Carolyn Stokes. The Crown Corporation that brought us the financially disastrous Muskrat Falls project will be dismantled.
Yes, but as Terry Roberts tells us tonight, government says the transition will be carefully planned in order to avoid any mistakes, and mass layoffs will not be one of the consequences.
The signals have been there for months, and today it became official. The Liberal government will eliminate Nalcor Energy, and its complex governance structure and contractual obligations will be merged with another Crown-owned utility, NL Hydro. But those signs up there will not disappear anytime soon.
We're going to do it in the right amount of time that respects the taxpayers of the province so that we're not putting ourselves at risk during a transaction like that.
The electricity system is incredibly dangerous, and so we had to be very careful to make sure we're making the right decisions.
Nalcor was created by then Premier Danny Williams in 2007 to manage the province's energy resources. But its legacy will be Muskrat Falls, a hydro project that is billions over budget, years behind schedule, and threatens to send power rates skyrocketing when finished later this year. So there's long been a target on Nalcor. The Public Utilities Board recommended last year that it be eliminated, and Moya Green wrote in her report last month that Nalcor is too expensive for a small province facing a financial crisis. And then there's the Muskrat Falls inquiry. Justice Richard LeBlanc found that Nalcor leaders took unprincipled steps to get the project sanctioned.
We have to find ways to do things better.
Energy Minister Andrew Parsons says dismantling Nalcor is part of a government-wide strategy to find efficiencies and save money. That process began this spring when controversial employee bonuses were outlawed, and when CEO Stan Marshall left earlier this month after 5 years at the helm. He was replaced by an interim CEO at a lower salary.
Me taking this job is a job loss. There's more of that to come.
There are 1,600 people working at Nalcor, but there won't be mass layoffs.
There's work to be done, but if I was the women and men of Nalcor, I wouldn't be sitting there riddled with anxiety.
Parsons praised the expertise at Nalcor and says there will be a role for those who worked on Muskrat and other projects.
In fact, as we look towards the future of hydro development and energy, we are going to need a lot of these women and men that have built up this skill set.
Just how much money will be saved is not known right now, but one of the first priorities is to remove the duplication that exists with having two Crown-owned public utilities in this province. Terry Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, meanwhile, at the House of Assembly today, the leaders of the opposition PCs and the NDP say they want questions answered about plans to fold Nalcor into Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro.
The issue here is they still haven't given a clear direction on where they're moving. How many jobs are affected? I mean, there's families here, there's businesses affected by this. These people now, all they know, they're here that there's a framework of some amalgamation and some merging of Nalcor into Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro. What does that mean for these families? What does it mean for the companies that deal with them? What does it mean for our energy sector and being able to be a world leader? So, it's good to talk the game, but you've actually got to be able to back it up with the information you have and the work that you did in the past.
Certainly there was a level of arrogance we did not see when there was a minority government, and I would have liked to have seen the House stay seated until the end of the session that we had intended. I think it was the 30th, because like we saw just today, there were some very important announcements that are very deserving of debate, and that's been curtailed. So I don't think that's very fair to the public of Newfoundland and Labrador.
Well, those heat warnings are still in place through parts of central and the interior, but take a look at these temperatures as the overnight lows. Many areas not seeing the temperature dipping anywhere below 18, even 19 degrees is what some areas saw. St. John's saw a high near 13 degrees, and then we've got those temperatures that dipped into the single digits across Labrador. But then they soared today. Temperatures back up into the 28, 29 degree range through parts of central. St. John's saw a high near 25 degrees, reached that a little bit later on in the afternoon. And the reason for that is we've got an area of low pressure with all that moist air moving up from the south. But you see that blue cold front there? That denotes the difference between some drier air and that humid air, and that will move through. That's going to clear things out, but I will get into all those details when I come back.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, police in Bay Roberts have charged a man with second-degree murder over a death that allegedly happened last night. The RCMP were called to a commercial accommodation on Roach's Line around 9 o'clock. Officers found an unresponsive man who they say later died at Carbonear General Hospital. Police have charged Patrick Sularayuk, a 30-year-old from Nunavut. Officers remain on scene, and the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner is investigating. And some tragic news out of Nain. A young person there has died. He was found floating in the water near a dock early this morning. RCMP received the call around 4:30. An officer removed the youth from the water and started CPR, but the youth was pronounced dead at a local clinic. Anyone with information is asked to come forward.
Well, another day with no new cases of COVID-19. There are no people in hospital because of it, and the number of active cases continues to be 13. Today is also the day that people are allowed to enter from other Atlantic provinces without quarantine, what politicians are calling the new Atlantic bubble. Now, New Brunswick has allowed fully vaccinated Canadians to enter without quarantine, which has raised some concerns from Nova Scotia, which is now requiring some isolation for New Brunswickers. But they'll be continued to welcome in this province, says Dr. Janice Fitzgerald.
In New Brunswick, they do have good vaccination rates. Their case rates are low. Their epidemiology is quite favorable, very similar to ours. So at the moment, we don't see that need to do that. You know, it's a very similar situation to what we had last summer. We will monitor the situation very closely. If we start to see an increase in cases in New Brunswick, then we will have to rethink things, I think. But, you know, at the moment, I think we're good to go on as we had planned.
Now today, Dr. Janice Fitzgerald also announced the first case of myocarditis, which is an inflammation of the heart by someone who was just vaccinated. It's a woman on the West Coast in her 20s or 30s. Dr. Fitzgerald says they don't know yet whether the vaccine actually caused it, and these reports are still very rare.
We can't really jump to say that there is a causation here. There's just an association, a signal. But of course, as with any new vaccine, we take that very seriously, we monitor it very closely, and investigate as need be. So as we have more information, we'll certainly make that available.
Now, the province also announced that starting Monday, you'll be able to go online and save or print off your proof of vaccination, something you may need if you're traveling. They also addressed concerns about mixing and matching different types of vaccines. We'll talk about that and answer some of your COVID questions a little later on tonight's show.
Well, in other news, some school bus companies say they've been burned by COVID contracts. Last year, those companies sourced extra buses to accommodate physical distancing. Now they're desperately trying to sell off their fleets to save their businesses. The CBC's Lindsay Bird has this report.
The start of this past school year in Newfoundland and Labrador was a school bus scramble. Public health restrictions meant buses could no longer carry a full load, and the English School District called for 100 extra buses at the very last minute. The district gave one-year contracts to private operators with an option to renew.
There's a flood in the market right now.
Evan Bursey co-owns Bursey's busing service near St. John's. He landed some of those contracts and says he bought $2 million worth of brand new buses.
So we dragged them from the US, Ontario and Quebec to get them here in order to be ready to start for the first day of school last September.
Now, less than a year later, Bursey is putting the new buses up for sale. He says he can't run the business with so little information about the coming school year.
This time is the sweet spot for us to be able to sell the inventory without losing too much of our investment. So we need to move now to make that work, and the longer we wait into the summer, the less chance we have to sell those and be stuck with our inventory.
On the other side of the island, Adam Buckle owns a bus company in Corner Brook. He says leftover pandemic funding from Ottawa should be used to renew the busing contracts.
Maybe we need to take a year and say, okay, let's take the safe bet. Let's be conservative on here. Let's renew the COVID contracts and make sure our kids are transported safely.
The district says it already has plans to use up that money, and Newfoundland and Labrador's education minister says busing will be back to normal for students old enough to be vaccinated. But Tom Osborne says it's too early to know what to do about younger children in September, by which time many of those extra buses may have already been sold out of the province. Lindsay Bird, CBC News, Corner Brook.
Oh, will there be busloads of people heading to downtown St. John's this summer? The George Street Association held an event announcing the Summer of George this afternoon. There's a calendar of events, including Canada Day, Pride, and Paddy's Day in July. Organizers even addressed the street's top ticket, the George Street Festival.
We are anticipating and looking forward to having a George Street Festival in some way, shape, or form, but of course, are working with our government, departments, and partners in every way possible so that when we can have such an event, that we will. So stay tuned to more information on our channels as we do what we can to make sure that at some point in 2021 that we have a festival that we can speak out and celebrate about, which is going to be super exciting.
Alberta has committed $8 million in grants to help First Nations find the remains of residential school victims. This after ground-penetrating radar recently detected what's believed to be hundreds of Indigenous children buried at a former residential school site in Kamloops, BC. Today, Premier Andrew Furey says he's consulted with Indigenous leaders in this province about possible burial sites and is waiting for their direction on how to best proceed.
Once collectively they come to a consensus about the approach they wish to employ, I'm happy enough to support it. Whether that's through, emotional support, financial support, infrastructure support, the government of Newfoundland and Labrador will be there to support that endeavor.
Well, it has been a strange time for students. The pandemic has made it hard to mark milestones like graduation.
Yep, but COVID hasn't hampered attendance at Shehajit Innu School. In fact, attendance has been on the rise since the school opened in 2009.
Yesterday, it organized a special ceremony and motorcade for its 2021 graduates. Have a look.
We've certainly seen a steady increase from day one in 2009 to this year. Of graduating students and students attending prom. So that means students, sticking it out and staying in school, and less students transferring out to other schools. We had 24 students attend prom this year, and I'm very pleased to say that many of them are receiving a diploma from Department of Education this year as well. And several students are heading to post-secondary education.
My plans are to go into nursing. That's what I want to do. I wanted to go into nursing because my grandmother was a midwife. I want to be like her. She was a strong woman. She's always been someone I looked up to growing up. And when she passed away in 2019, I think I realized then how much she meant to me.
Education is improving in the community. People weren't surprised to see that there's more students graduating, especially in a COVID year. People were sticking it out, and a lot of that is due to the tireless hours put in by our teachers here. Our high school staff is top notch, and they put in the extra effort to make sure the students know they're cared about and that they have a place in our school and that their education is the first and foremost.
The last couple of days have been hot and humid, but you can open up your windows tonight because things are going to cool down and it looks like a beautiful day for tomorrow, but I'll get into all of those details when I come back after the break.
Time now for a look at the weather forecast. And Ashley, it is a humid one out there today for sure.
Yes, it is. It's feeling even more humid than it did yesterday across parts of the province, certainly here in the east. Let's take a look at the heat warning still in place through the interior and most of central, from Green Bay, White Bay through to Bonavista North, and I anticipate that those will end as we head through the night tonight as those temperatures will start to drop. But afternoon highs today, another day in the high 20s. St. John's reached a high near 25 degrees. A little cooler though along the south coast. 14, 15 degrees, and that's because you've been socked in fog for the past couple of days. But the good news is that as some of that drier air moves in, we should actually see that lift. And temperatures right now still sitting in the 25 to 27 degree range, so a beautiful evening, and we'll continue to see some of these milder temperatures and as well this humidity. So current dew points sitting between 16 to 20 degrees through central. That's when we start to get sticky and uncomfortable, and that is leading to those humidex values anywhere from 30 to 34. Earlier today there were some areas, Gander for example was seeing a humidex near 37. So we will see that break as we head through the overnight tonight. See that warm front there and that cold front in behind it, the blue. That's bringing all of that mild air up, but in behind that cold front is some much cooler air. And if you can see here, that humidity in the lighter colors there, in behind that, that drier air. So as we head through the night tonight, we'll see that humidity break. And tomorrow, we'll say goodbye to that humidity through most of the province and continuing for the next couple of days. We will see that humidity return though into next week, but before that some pretty lovely weather actually. But overnight tonight we're going to see the chance of a few more showers. There are some showers working their way through eastern Newfoundland as we speak, and that risk will continue tonight, and then we should see some clearing skies in behind that cold front as we get into the early morning hours, setting the stage for a quite lovely evening. Temperatures anywhere from 11 to 14 degrees. The winds will ease a little bit as well, certainly on the west coast, and then southwesterlies anywhere from 20 to 30 kilometers per hour in the east. Single digit highs, the story, or rather lows, the story across Labrador. The chance of a few showers will continue though for the northern peninsula and southeastern Labrador before you see your clearing skies in the morning. So tomorrow, not a whole lot happening. Ridge of high pressure will dominate for the most part, keeping the skies generally clear. And again, because we're not in that moist southwesterly flow, areas along southern Newfoundland should see some clearing skies, and that fog will finally lift as well. And then some showers late day, it looks like, for northern Labrador as well as the west as we get into the early morning hours. Some heavier rain potentially for Lab West as well. So temperatures tomorrow will be lovely, 20 to 21 degrees, but note that wind shift, northwesterlies to northeasterlies as the day goes on. So in the afternoon, we'll actually see that temperature dip into the teens for most of coastal areas, including up through Bonavista, and then even, I'd say, Bonavista North will likely see that drop in temperatures as well. As you head towards central, your temperatures will be into the 20s, 24 degrees for Grand Falls, Windsor, keeping that temperature in the teens for Twillingate though. 16 degrees will be the afternoon high, maybe a few clouds in the afternoon, but overall it will be a beautiful day, certainly towards the west coast. 22 degrees in Corner Brook, and then 20 degrees in Burgeo. So you're finally going to see those warm, mild temperatures. For the northern peninsula, you'll see your temperatures in the teens as well, keeping it a little bit warmer for southeastern Labrador with your winds out of the west, about 15 to 20 kilometers per hour, and then back into the 20s for Lab City. 21 degrees will be your afternoon high, but your winds will be a little breezy out of the southwest, gusting near 50. So a quiet couple of days coming up, and then, like I said, that humidity will return by next week, but I will get into the long range forecast when I come back.
The evidence that we have and the science that backs up our decision making certainly tells us that these are interchangeable.
Mixing and matching vaccines, I'll share Dr. Janice Fitzgerald's advice, and we'll find out why they're not shortening our wait for second doses like some other provinces are doing.
So Peter, we are hearing a lot of questions from people about the mixing and matching of Pfizer and Moderna.
Oh yeah, no, my inbox has been full with a lot of your questions because the province has said even if you book a shot of one of those, they may end up giving you another one, especially because the province right now is flooded with 3 doses of Moderna for every 1 they're receiving of Pfizer.
Okay, so Peter, let's talk about why we're seeing the mixing and matching. In the U.S., the Center for Disease Control has said to avoid doing that. So why has Canada embraced it?
Yeah, the advice has been different north of the border. The first part is let's just talk about why it's needed. So for the first doses, we were mostly receiving a big dose of Pfizer. But for second doses, we're mostly getting Moderna. So if we insisted on giving everyone the same dose they got the first time, we'd end up with it taking longer to get everyone fully vaccinated. And we'd have doses sitting in the fridge without arms to go into them. So the second part is it safe and effective? And today, Dr. Janice Fitzgerald says mixing and matching brands of vaccines happens all the time. Normally, we're not paying attention about what brand of vaccine we're getting. She gave the example of the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine for children.
We start with one type of an MMR vaccine and finish out your series with a different type of an MMR vaccine. That happens quite commonly in a lot of vaccine programs. And so when we look at what's required for a vaccine to be interchangeable, so they have to be approved for the same purpose, which these are. They have to produce similar antigens, which these do. They have to have very similar immunogenicity and side effect profiles, which these do. So, you know, we certainly are seeing that the evidence that we have and the science that backs up our decision making certainly tells us that these are interchangeable. And I think as time goes on, we'll certainly see that borne out in the evidence.
Okay, but what happens if people don't want to mix and match? Say they really want to stick with Pfizer or Moderna. Do they have that choice?
So when you do get there, you may not have a choice because they may only have one type available, but they're not going to force you to get a shot of something you don't want. They won't guarantee that they have it, though, either. So what'll happen is they may have to rebook you for another time in order to get the preferred one you want. But the message today was don't hold off on trying and wait until you hopefully get a second shot of something you want. It's better to get everyone get vaccinated early because they are safe and effective, according to health officials.
Okay, and other provinces are speeding up their vaccinations, but we're sticking with at least 8 weeks between doses. So why is that?
Right. Initially, when we were at 16 weeks, the delay was because we didn't have enough supply. And now we're getting a whole lot more supply. And so what's holding things up? Well, essentially, in Ontario, for example, they are letting people book faster. We're sticking with 8 weeks right now. And even the federal government has said that by the end of July, we're going to have enough supply of vaccine for everyone to be able to get those 2 doses. So it's now less about supply. The question is, what's the most effective? Now, these vaccines were approved with a 3 or 4 week interval. So the province could do it faster, but Dr. Janice Fitzgerald says there's some evidence that leaving a little more time could give a better immune response or give you a longer immune response.
I certainly can appreciate why some jurisdictions would want to get that second dose done faster. We thankfully are in an enviable position where that epidemiology is not ours. So you know, if we maybe can improve the immune response, then we'd like to do that.
Now, the question, of course, is could this change again? And with a pandemic, as we've seen all along, it's possible. They're constantly looking at the science to try and figure out whether there is any evidence that maybe they should tighten it up. And certainly if things changed, for example, we started seeing more cases and there was more urgency. But as you heard there from Dr. Fitzgerald, because our case counts have been lower, we have a little more flexibility to wait a little bit longer. But they are still expecting that everyone is going to have their second dose by the end of August, which would mean time for back to school. One of the key things, of course, when you talk about back to school, the other thing they're going to watch for is approvals for younger children. Right now, it's only people 12 and older, but they'll keep an eye on that, and hopefully by the fall, there may be approval for younger kids to be able to get their shots. Carolyn.
Thanks, Peter. Well, here's a positive economic spin on the pandemic. Despite all the hardships, some Canadians are now sitting on record levels of savings, and many plan to spend it soon. That has huge implications for the real estate market and the economy as a whole. CBC's Kyle Bax has that story.
I have a dishwasher and our stove and a range hood there.
Karen Jacobs is renovating her new home from top to bottom. She and her husband became first-time homebuyers after saving a bundle during the pandemic.
It was easy to save. It was very forced, right? Like, you know, I can't go get my nails done, get my hair done, going to the pubs a lot less.
Canadians socked away more than $200 billion last year. Those who were still getting paychecks saved almost 15% of their disposable income, compared to a little more than 1% the year before. The majority of that money is sitting in bank accounts. Now, as restrictions ease, some business owners are excited about the promise of a blockbuster summer fueled by pent-up demand.
For a year and a half, it feels like we've been locked down, so I feel like there is going to be quite a rush to go to anything.
Quietly optimistic, actually jumping up and down optimistic, and we're starting to see it.
But there's still worry about what comes next, since government support programs like the rent and wage subsidies won't be around forever.
The real concern financially is going to be when all of that dries up, do sales kick up enough in order to handle that?
Will Canadians continue the habit of saving? This economist doubts it, since most of the money accrued is accessible with the swipe of a bank card.
In the aftermath of the pandemic, we can expect households might keep more saving than they've done in the past, but the vast majority will be spent.
While some people have been able to save, millions of Canadians lost their job or business. If consumer spending picks up, especially in hard-hit sectors like restaurants and tourism, that could help bridge the divide. Kyle Bax, CBC News, Calgary.
Workers from the travel industry staged a rally outside the British Parliament today. They're calling on the government to reopen the sector, which has been battered by the pandemic.
We only earn money when people go on holiday. We can't send anybody on holiday.
Industry groups say 195,000 jobs have been lost or are at risk. They also say that as many as half of all small travel agencies won't be able to survive for another 3 months. They're calling on the British government to open more travel routes and destinations and ease quarantine restrictions for people who are fully vaccinated.
The most common question that's asked at every session is, were these vaccines made too fast and are they safe?
A Q&A for newcomers to Newfoundland and Labrador.
Debunking and addressing COVID concerns in Arabic, Hindi, Punjabi, and more. That's coming up.
province's immigration plan is out. The provincial government announced new details today. Its goal is to bring in and keep more immigrants than ever before, more than 5,000 newcomers a year for 5 years. The province is planning to spend $2 million in marketing and advertising, plus another $5 million on things like an online application system, more staffing, and foreign qualification recognition to help get newcomers here and settled. Fury says that's important to help fix Newfoundland and Labrador's population crisis.
Decades ago, this province had 6 children for every senior. Now, we have almost 2 seniors for every child. Newfoundland and Labrador is the only province in Canada with a declining population, and as we age, there are fewer young people here to replace our workforce.
Well, as the province announces some details on its plan to attract more immigrants to this province, a virtual question and answer session is happening this evening to help inform newcomers about COVID-19 vaccinations. Joining me now is Iman Tind, a public health practitioner and one of the panelists at that virtual event. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Carol.
Well, at the best of times, being a newcomer to this province can pose some challenges, but throw COVID-19 and vaccines into the mix, and I imagine it gets even more complicated. Can you start by talking about the goal of this event tonight?
Yeah, so the goal of our event this evening is to foster discussion about the safety and efficacy of COVID-19 vaccines and address any concerns anyone might have and provide information about the same.
So this is targeted to newcomers in this province. Why that population specifically?
So COVID-19 Resources Canada, that's the organization with whom I'm a volunteer science communicator. We have been hosting nightly Q&A sessions for all Canadians. So I reached out to Association for New Canadians NL, and they said that they would be happy to have such a session and that there is a need for their clients.
What kind of challenges does that population face, newcomers to this province, that people who've lived here their entire lives, that they don't face when it comes to vaccine information?
So I think a common thread among all populations in Canada is just the sheer amount of misinformation that is circulating online, which is very hard to sift through and identify what is accurate and what's not. The majority of newcomers to Canada speak multiple languages. Sometimes English just doesn't happen to be one of them. If you imagine if majority of the information in Canada was being shared in French, you can certainly relate and understand that that would be hard for the average Canadian to relate to and understand. So with the goal of sharing, making the session as accessible as possible to newcomers, we're offering the session in multiple languages, such as including Arabic, English, Hindi, Punjabi, Urdu.
What kind of questions do you expect to hear from people?
The most common question that's asked at every session is, were these vaccines made too fast and are they safe? Most of the questions in general that we get as with COVID-19 Resources Canada, I see that the questions are almost the same, like they're almost identical when it comes to questions arising from white Canadians or people from certain ethnic communities.
And I noticed that in the poster for the event, it says that this will be a non-judgmental session. So why is it important for participants to know that this is non-judgmental?
I think it's very important to know that because no question is too small when it comes to questions surrounding COVID-19 vaccines. And people should feel, we would like people to feel comfortable with sharing any concerns they might have. For example, when it comes to certain populations and certain individuals, they might have experienced some historical traumas related to medical racism and history of which creates a valid distrust in the medical system. So we would like to be able to hear everyone's concerns and answer their questions in an accurate way, in a clear way, and with humility.
And you mentioned, of course, all of that misinformation that's fueling vaccine hesitancy all over the world. What more do you think that healthcare providers in this province can do to help alleviate concerns about vaccines?
I believe that there is an overfocus of the term vaccine hesitancy in the media, especially when it comes to ethnic communities being discussed. I think that vaccine access is a bigger issue than vaccine hesitancy. And with regards to healthcare providers, making their patients feel more comfortable, active listening goes a long way when it comes to healthcare providers and patients when they come from different backgrounds, and addressing their concerns with humility and respect.
Well, Iman, thank you so much for joining us, and good luck with the panel tonight.
Thank you.
Well, now to the controversy over Canada Day. Conservative Party leader Erin O'Toole addressed caucus as the House of Commons prepares to rise for the summer. He expressed concerns about some communities deciding to cancel Canada Day celebrations in the wake of recent events, including the discovery of remains at a residential school in BC. O'Toole says the road to equality, inclusion, and reconciliation does not involve tearing Canada down.
There are many Canadians that want to celebrate what I believe to be one of the best countries in the world. But for many, that isn't the shared reality. And I think that's the diversity of our country. It is, I think.
Now, that isn't Erin O'Toole, leader of the Conservative Party. Apologies there. That's actually Mark Miller, a federal cabinet minister. Well, June is National Indigenous History Month, and in honor of that, we've been playing videos created by First Light Friendship Centre and the National Centre for Collaboration in Indigenous Education. The next one focuses on Cassidy Lush and what happens when a person's appearance doesn't match their identity. How do you navigate that? Lush loves her culture. She's Mi'kmaq, but she's white passing. Cassidy's had people question her Indigenous identity because of how she looks. But she doesn't let that shake her.
Dancing to the drum. I'm dancing to the drum.
Hi, my name is Cassie Lush. I'm a 13-year-old Mi'kmaq girl. I'm a drummer and a singer. I've been singing since I've been able to talk. I can't remember a time in my life where I haven't been singing. But when I started singing in my Mi'kmaq language. I got my first drum when I was around 2 or 3. It was a little First Nations hand drum, and it had a little lion carved into it, so I named it Simba. I would drum and sing with my mom all the time as a young kid, and still do. My mom would always take me to the drum circle at the Friendship Center. I would be so excited for it every week because we would drum and sing and smudge and have a talking circle. And I was very involved with it, and I always loved to tell the different stories and teachings that I've gotten taught from my elders and my mom. My mom's also been taking me to the powwow in Conn River since I was very young, and I also look forward to that every year. It's probably the highlight of my year every year. But as you can see, I have light skin, blue eyes, and previous to purple, I had blonde hair. And most people think that First Nations people have to have dark skin and brown eyes and some sort of shade of dark hair. And clearly I don't fit that stereotype. So when I tell people that I'm First Nations and that I'm proud of being First Nations, they always look me up and down and say, "Oh, well, you don't look it," or, "Oh, how much percentage do you have? You must not have that much," or something like that. But I am confident enough in myself to say that it doesn't matter about how I look or how much percentage I have. I love my culture, and I'm very involved with my culture, and I have been for a very long time. When I get older and have kids, they probably won't have their status, but that doesn't matter to me. I'm still going to teach them their culture because it's still going to be their culture, and I'm going to teach them all the teachings that I've learned when I was a young kid and gift them a drum. And if I learn how to speak in my language, teach them how to speak in their language. And I hope after them it gets passed down from generation to generation and forever.
Dancing to the drum.
Next, we want to talk about unidentified flying objects, or UFOs. They evoke a sense of mystery for many, but also a fair amount of mockery. Over the years, there have been numerous accounts of unexplained sightings in the sky.
Now, some were credible enough to prompt the U.S. government to set up a task force to investigate them. A much anticipated report may soon offer official insights, but not conclusions, about their existence.
The CBC's Katie Simpson has more.
We're going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west.
Top secret investigations into sightings of unidentified flying objects have been going on for years behind closed doors at the Pentagon. But even with the U.S. military putting some of its brightest minds on these cases, there's no clear answer yet as to what these things in the sky may be. Sightings including this one captured on video by Navy pilots in 2015 during training exercises off the coast of Jacksonville, Florida. The former lead investigator looking into these mysterious events is asking the public to keep an open mind.
This is a conversation that may lead us down a road that may turn out it's not of human origin.
There are two leading theories as to what these things may be. Either something potentially alien that's from another world, or it could be an adversary, China or Russia, leapfrogging past U.S. aerospace capabilities. The unclassified report, which must be presented to lawmakers by Friday, is expected to rule out that pilots have accidentally stumbled upon secret American government technology. Retired astronaut Colonel Chris Hadfield, who was also a fighter pilot and a test pilot, says the videos are interesting, but he is certain the objects are not from outer space.
It just makes no sense at all. You know, that intelligent life from somewhere we have no idea. It's obviously not from our solar system because we've had a good look at every planet so far. Could cross interstellar space. And they wouldn't try and, communicate with anybody. They would just sneak around and only be caught on strange-looking video by some fighter pilots. It doesn't pass any basic sniff test of logic.
The report is not expected to draw any firm conclusions as to what exactly those pilots saw in the sky, but it has changed the official conversation around UFOs. With the military taking these reports seriously, lawmakers are demanding greater transparency while also calling it a national security issue because these unexplained objects have been spotted in American airspace when they shouldn't be there. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
That's interesting.
Yeah, no, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on what you saw in those videos there? Any prediction?
The truth is out there, Peter.
That's a good line. Maybe they should make a TV series about that. You might be onto something there.
Ashley is back, and Ashley, you're saying we're going to get a break from the humidity tomorrow, but I'm already thinking ahead to the weekend. How is that looking?
It's actually looking pretty nice for most of the island as we sit under a ridge of high pressure. Going to feel pretty beautiful by the time Friday rolls around. We're going to see those temperatures bump up as well. But let's take a look at the future tracker because there is some rain in the forecast for parts of Labrador. We're going to see that through the first half of Friday, and then most of that cloud cover should be in play through most of the day across the big land. We'll probably start to see some cloud cover in the morning for the west coast of the island, but overall it will be an unsettled start to the weekend for Labrador, and it looks like that's going to generally continue through the afternoon on Saturday. And then we'll start to see a little bit more cloud cover in play as it starts to creep a little bit further east across the island, and then by Sunday looking at some generally cloudy skies. We'll probably see a few peaks of sun in play as well, but overall unsettled across Labrador, and then that chance of showers as well for the west coast and the north as we get into Sunday afternoon and even through Monday morning. Monday looks like it'll be a little bit unsettled pretty much across the board. So Friday, beautiful start though. Temperatures will start to jump back up again into the mid to high 20s for central and western areas of the island, even parts of the northern peninsula as well, getting into those mid 20s. And then across Labrador, you're going to hang on to that chance of showers, like I said. However, your temperatures are going to be really mild, 22 to 26 degrees, and then double digits for northern Labrador as well. Nain will sit around 15 degrees as your daytime highs. A little bit warmer on Saturday for you, a little bit more sunshine as well, but still going to hang on to that chance of showers. And then the showers more than likely in the evening hours for the west coast, and then sunshine for the remainder. But again, you'll see some increasing cloud as the day goes on. But another beautiful day, 22 to 25 degrees through central, and a little cooler for the northern peninsula as well as the southwest coast. After that, Sunday going to keep a little bit more cloud cover in for St. John's and eastern Newfoundland, but by Monday we should see some showers, but overnight lows again into the teens, so not dropping too much, and daytime highs in the 20s. Pretty nice to start the weekend, or at least the first full weekend of summer. And then for central Newfoundland, you're looking at some showers by Monday, and then 23 degrees. And then for the west coast, you'll see those showers a little bit earlier. Saturday night, Sunday, and Monday looks like you'll see some showers and some gray skies as well. And then for eastern Labrador, unsettled for both Saturday and Sunday, but look, your temperatures into the 20s. And then same thing for Lab West, beautiful day on Sunday to end off the weekend. Wanted to share this photo. This was Hickman's Harbor just after sunrise this morning. Scott shared that lovely shot with us. And if you have any weather photos, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Thanks, Ashley. Some beautiful,
gorgeous light there.
Yeah, some beautiful weather lately. So good for the garden. So many flowers in bloom right now. It's so nice.
Absolutely.
Well, Peter, before we finish up, you mentioned earlier in the show that people can go online and print out proof of immunization. So how does that work?
Yeah, so if you've ever had to go online and check the result of a COVID test, this is going to be a similar process, and it's going to happen starting on Monday. So if you enter information like your birth date, your MCP number, what it's going to pull up is your record of vaccination. So that means that if you lose the sheet that they give you, because I know this is one of the questions I've had from a lot of people, they've already lost the first sheet. How are they going to be able to prove that they're vaccinated? So you're going to be able to go online, and it's going to give you details like what kind of vaccine you got. It'll also give you the lot numbers, the date you were vaccinated, things like that. And if you're wondering, well, what's stopping people from forging this information? Well, if they're suspicious, they can look up the lot numbers and dates if it's other provinces within Canada. But largely it's going to be going on the honor system.
There's been a lot of talk and controversy really about the idea of a vaccine passport. So is this a passport, or how does that work?
Yes and no. Every province is going to have a slightly different version of this, and so the forms are going to look different. So far, they haven't been able to agree on like one national standard. The federal government, these are all still talks that are happening, especially if people want to travel internationally. Is there one app that they can use that's going to be recognized by Europe? Things like that. So this is all under discussion, but for now, you'll at least have a piece of paper that you'll be able to show elsewhere in the country that people should be able to recognize.
News you can use. Thanks so much, Peter, and thanks everyone at home for watching tonight.
Have a great night.